I'm Carolyn Holzman, and this is Confessions of an SEO. These weekly confessions are going to run 15, maybe 20 minutes, give or take. Season 6 is an exploration of the physics of information extraction from web content by the AI models. In other words, geocitations and how to survive it as an SEO. Welcome to episode 29 of Season 6 of Confessions of an SEO. Today I'm going to share something new about Google Site Verification Crawler, and not so much about the crawler as the schedule of the site verification crawl. And yes, this came from server log study based on multiple websites that I have access to, the actual raw logs, and for a number of months. Now, these sites range from a massive, severe loss of visibility in the SERPs to a pristine unicorn of a domain. And in that case, we're actually hitting publish and the page is indexed and served without any other additional effort. And then there's other few sites that are in between those two extremes. So this is not the stuff you're going to hear or get anywhere else. And if you have questions, you can find this episode on the Confessions of an SEO YouTube channel, and you can post questions in the comments, and I will answer them. So here we go. All right. So in normal SEO land, we can also say legacy SEO, search engine marketing. One of the things that we do the first time maybe that we get our hands on a domain is that we install a little piece of code on it. And this is called the Google Site Verification file. And these are very small HTML files that we upload to our site so that Google can confirm that we do indeed own this site that will now let us connect into their data about our sites. And very often this is really treated as a set it and forget it administrative chore. I mean, it's kind of nothing, right? So most webmasters upload the verification token once, and they assume that Google's indexing system never thinks about it again unless a user manually triggers some sort of change in their search console. I have news for you. In the era of this agentic web, where we're getting crawled by everybody and their brother, you can tell so much more. And in fact, I can confirm that it is possible to use the data from these sites and the server logs to know exactly what caused a site to get hit. Now, Google's central site verification server, it's executing automated, highly structured crawls, or sweeps, if you will. And by analyzing these raw server logs, I've discovered that these sweeps by this, and I'm using bunny ears, trust Sentinel. It's not just a site verification thing, that's an actual trust piece. These crawls are not random. In fact, they are, in some cases, highly structured monthly events that they run on a very strict, repeatable schedule. For example, if your site is in this category, you're going to see, let's say, for example, on the 19th of every month, you're going to see a Google Site Verification crawl. Now, if the Site Verification Crawler is knocking on your door, that once a month schedule, it is acting as a trust sentinel, and it means your domain is locked in some sort of topical probation. Topical as in you're probably dealing with a helpful content issue, a topical issue versus a structural issue. So in discovering this scheduling clock, I had looked at the last 4 months of tracking logs for the active case study that I've been telling you about, that I'm so excited and checking on first thing in the morning every day. And this domain is undergoing an active rehabilitation process after what can only be called a very severe helpful content suppression. April 19th, May 19th, June 19th, July 19th. Are you sensing a pattern? Because it's textbook conformational pattern. So for this domain in the case study, there is a physical, one would say deterministic, 30-day automatic master clock cycle running somewhere on the 19th of each month. Now, does it only happen on the 19th, or is it only the 19th for this domain? So to verify if this is a monthly clock, universally scheduled or site-specific anchor, I reach back into the raw logs in 2026 for another site that I also suspect is a helpful content hit. It's not as extreme, but it felt like one when I was looking at various things. Well, guess what? January 6th, February 6th, and so on. Get the pattern? So there is a master clock. It is site-specific, but it is timely. It's scheduled. And the ultimate takeaway of this is whatever day of the month Google has scheduled for a domain, it's a predictive crawl. You can count on it. You could set your watch by it. And it is a verification window every single month. And if you are having any issues on your site, or you suspect you're having any issues on your site, you should be grabbing for your server logs immediately. So how do you tell what you're looking at, right? Okay, so let's look at what kind of style audit you may be undergoing. So like, how is Google watching you? And so you can't really sort of you want to definitely get the raw logs. You don't want to look through a third-party tool. I cannot emphasize that enough. So you're going to basically look at those logs, and we'll call it a verification audit, right? A verification crawler audit. So if you don't see something that says Google site verification in the string, you can't assume that you're safe. So if you see them, take note. And if you don't see them, take note. So now, if you're not seeing them, you want to go to Search Console and confirm how you told Google you wanted to verify that you own that site. Because there are multiple methods of verification in there, and they walk you through them. Now, the HTML file method, this is, the preferential one if you want to see this in your logs, and I'll tell you why. Because if you're the verified owner via this HTML file, Google must request that physical file. So you're going to see it in your logs. That's how it verifies, is that it will crawl that HTML file, and you will see a visible hit in your server logs. And if you see it every month, then you know you're in some sort of topical probation. Now, there's a different one where you put a tag in the header of your homepage, and Google re-verifies ownership, but they do it silently. So it reads the tag if it's through a standard routine content crawl of your homepage. So you won't see separate Google site verification agent hits. It would just be like a regular Google bot coming. So you can't really tell the difference between those and these. So there's the ones where they normally come, and there's the ones where they would come and actually verify. Then the other way is where you sort of set up your DNS records, text records. And if you verified via those DNS records, Google queries your domain's DNS name servers directly. So it occurs completely offsite, and there is like no footprint in your server logs. So those are things. Now I'm going to say like, well, how do you get out of this, right? It's like, I don't want to be in probation. So how does a domain escape? How does it develop trust? And we can see the answer And because I also have logs for a unicorn site, as well as logs for a second case study. So I use the unicorn as a baseline. Like, what should this thing look like? And in this particular case, this is an established and, according to the server logs, trusted authority. Now, over the same time frame, there were 0 Google site verification checks, because this is a site that runs the VizzEx Pro software. And this enforces, I should say, these little microscopic style sheet weights. So they're not, anytime the crawlers come, whether it's Googlebot or any of the other LLM models, they're getting tiny, tiny little files. And the HTML to the rendered DOM is a 1-to-1 perfect parity. And Google Scheduler catches that, and this trust is now extended to the domain. So it's kind of like full trust equals full authority. So they don't have to come and check on you using the site verification. Now, the non-helpful content hit on a slightly sick site, not the one in the original case study, but this slightly sick site also received 0 site verification hits over the same period, but it has successfully converted its crawl budget from that probationary crawl delay, or as I like to call it, crawl 0, and it's now in a more active crawl position. So, that's kind of like, well, Carolyn, why doesn't it have it? So I needed to, I talked about before how you could tell by looking at the server logs and isolating Google crawls what may have been the root cause of this suppression. So comparing the logs of our 2 case studies against the baseline, the massively injured helpful content hit and the slightly sick one, it kind of allows us to, in a way, make some sense of what we're looking at. Crawl suppression is not a uniform penalty. So it's triggered by some specific structural deficits and some structural presence. So anyway, let's go back to the massively injured one. This one had, like I say, some real problems. It failed both gates, the Symmetry Gate and the algorithmic gate. It also had hidden divs in there. And I don't mean hidden divs like part of the theme working. I'm talking about content in the hidden divs. So it basically flagged all of that as a cloaking risk. And the connectivity gate, all of the pages on this site, there were hardly any of them connected to each other. So there was no relationship mapping between them. There was nothing prior to getting hit with the penalty. So that triggered a very severe crawl suppression, and it locked the site into these monthly, I guess we call it Trust Sentinel watch list. Every day, every 19th of every month, it's going to check. And that slightly sick site, try saying that 10 times fast, this was a very clean structure. It didn't have any kind of probation. It had no hidden content. It was a little connected, not terribly much, but the problem was at the server level, it was doing a double to triple hop, depending on how you came in. And I'll explain what that means. So the bots, certainly Google, comes in. Sometimes they have a list. So let's say they came in with a non-secure version of the URL. Well, ideally, your server is only going to make a single hop over to the secure version. And if it comes in, if you use www, it'll come in with the version of your domain without that subdomain. And again, it's counting hops, baby. So that was the problem on this slightly sick site, is that when it was coming in, it was doing these double or sometimes triple hops the way the server was configured. Now, the moment that the server floor was hardened, which is always a good idea to do that if you don't know what that is, because this is going to reduce your response times. When Google validates the layout and you've bypassed the Sentinel watch list, and this was achieved through, again, all my case studies are based on using the VizzEx Pro software on the WordPress site. What happened was once all that got hardened on this second case study, Google got it. It validated the layout, and boom, ba, boom, and Bob's your uncle, right? So immediately we started to see a high volume sitemap crawl on July 14th. So it started. Now, if you're taking notes, you should have a couple of takeaways. And if you weren't, I'm going to be your friend and go through it. So one, you want to check your raw server logs for Google site verification crawlers. Do not rely on a third-party tool. Get your hands dirty. Get the actual raw logs. It is worth it. Now, two, likely your host is only going to provide you with 30 days worth. So you may have to be patient until you have a full 60 days to be able to determine anything. But as you move, you want to parse out the Google site verification records and then compare the dates. Now, if you see site verifications once a month on the same day, you've got a helpful content topical issue. You are on probation, so you need to get busy. And if you ask me, I would definitely recommend get VizzEx, not because I'm involved in the software, but because my research is involved in the software, and start creating that structural, that architectural trust going on your server and your content immediately. Now, four, even if you don't see them, remember you may not be in the clear. So you want to go to your Search Console, confirm how you set up verification, and if it wasn't by a file on your site, you might want to switch to that method and upload that little HTML file and be diligent. Watch, gather, look. And five, like I said, if you still don't see them, confirm your server only makes one hop from, let's say, the unsecure, which would be the HTTP : to the secure HTTPS : and there's a whole series of diagnostic tests. I'm sure you may know what these are. You can perform these in your own browser. And if not, you can certainly get one of those link tracers. There's several of them online. You pop in one of your unsecure URLs and see what happens. See how many hops it takes. So if you are only looking at Search Console crawl stats report in the settings, you are and you will be completely blind to this checking of your lock that's going to be happening every month, because that's a completely separate part of Google. So Google excludes the site verification hits from the crawl stats reports. So a penalized site on topical probation will look completely dead and silent in Search Console, while its raw server logs are screaming with these monthly identity sweeps trying to tell you what the problem is. Well, I'm Carolyn Holzman, and that's it for me this week. VizzEx Pro software organizes the server signature that LLMs are built to trust. VizzEx builds the race car, and your expertise provides the gas. It operates as the global authority on information extraction by LLMs that lead to geocitations. And remember, you want to keep your signals clear and clean. That's the symmetry. And your HTML honest. And I will see you next week on Confessions of an SEO.